Oh dear. There, that's how they work. I don't really love the angle. Too fucking short. Hi! Oh gosh, everything is askew. How you doing? How's life treating you? It has been a while. Clearly. I thought that I was gonna get into making videos more often again, and I, at the time, thought, yeah, this is gonna be great. And then I decided, no, you know what, I'm just gonna live my life. And that was a good call. This year has been interesting, to say the least. And I might just leave it at that for the most part, but it has been a really good one. I had been thinking about trying to do something significant video-wise because in March I had my 30th birthday, which obviously is a pretty decent milestone to have achieved for someone who never planned their life after school because they didn't anticipate anything working out. Yeah, I don't know. Something about this year has been a huge shift for me. I've been making a lot of big changes that have needed to happen. Thinking about a lot of things very differently than I used to. And honestly, after the holidays ended and kind of my birthday was coming up and things were rolling around, at the time I knew that this was going to be a big and significant year for me. I don't know what it was, but just something in the air felt like, hey, things are gonna finally feel a lot better than they have in a long time. And so far that has really rang true. I myself am not one to celebrate birthdays, and yet this year's was one of the most special that I've had in a very long time. Starting with, you know, just simple things like going out for dinner and going to the ballet. My parents being in town very briefly but not having enough time to see me, so leaving a literal scavenger hunt around my apartment. Maybe that was last year. Everything's blending together! But because I normally don't do anything big for my birthday, I also decided that I was just gonna work that day. Like, I obviously had work during the day at my day job, but I thought I'd do the show. And oh my god, everyone at Medieval Times is just so kind. I was given a little mini gift basket of like little candies and foods and things. They did an announcement for me, which is something that, you know, they do for big things. But they, you know, congratulated my 30th birthday and called me the most fierce pocket princess, which is kind of an inside joke. Another friend of mine gave me a Queen of the Tournament sash, a green one, which coincidentally is my favorite color. Whether or not they knew that, I don't know, but that and a horseshoe that they had kind of sanded off that belonged to one of the horses at one point, which I now have hanging above my door for good luck. And yeah, since then I've been doing a lot of soul searching, figuring out what it is that I want and need, and it's caused some big changes, which is sad, but they're changes that have needed to happen, and I'm not fully there yet with everything that I'm trying to figure out and will always be trying to figure out. But, you know, this summer has been amazing. I've spent some time with family, more so than I have in a while. I have been doing a lot of sewing and a lot of kind of handsy projects, which is very satisfying for me because I'm very much someone who loves to work with my hands. Shut up, that is not a that's what she said. I took a trip on my own for the first time to visit my friend Haley in Calgary, which was absolutely lovely. She moved back there just before the pandemic, and this is the first time I had a chance to go and hang out with her in her hood. But more importantly than that, and the reason for this getup, is I went to a week-long LARP that I just came back from a week ago, and I could not be in general a person that makes videos however infrequent and not talk about this amazing thing. So yeah, long-winded intro to talking about my experience at le Duché de Bicolline, or Bicolline, or Bico. For first and foremost, it was amazing. I feel like I need to bring you in closer because now the wide angle is freaking me out. So you're gonna come closer. There, that's kind of more like it, baby. I don't know, you tell me. Bicolline. So, obviously, I am a massive nerd, and I am a fiend for fantasy. So, of course, you know, the whole Renaissance Fair LARP idea is something that was always going to be a thing I got into eventually. That said, I had only been to a Renaissance Fair twice before in my life. The first time when I was probably about 10, which was when my Nana and Papa were driving with me and my cousin Christopher home after spending a week in Toronto, which is a thing that we would do every summer for years. That was my first introduction to Ren fairs. I remember there being a really cool kind of like, I'm gonna say pirate show? I remember them using rapiers, and I remember them using a watermelon as an example of why you should not let your children anywhere close to the stage. There was a blacksmith, there was a glass blower, you know, fortune teller booth. I remember buying a crystal. They did jousting at this thing. That was my first experience with a turkey leg. And I mean, I'm small now. Turkey legs are still like this big. 10-year-old me was in fucking heaven. And the second time was just, I want to say 5-6 years ago. I went with the person that I was seeing at the time and just went for an afternoon. It was a lot smaller, that's for sure, but we still got the turkey leg. It was simple, you know, sword fighting, a little mini story, but that was it. And so when I heard about this Bicolline event, it was something that I had never actually heard of before. A couple friends that I work with at Medieval Times went for the first time the year before the pandemic hit, and they were not only just ridiculously excited to go the first time, but they raved about it when they got back. And I didn't even really know what it was. I just assumed that it was a week-long Ren fair that you could stay at, because I didn't know anything about LARP. I've learned a lot more about LARP in the years since, and obviously having since gone to this. But at the time I had no idea what it was, and I just thought, that sounds really cool. Next time you go, can I come? They said, of course, yeah. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, okay. So that's just a general invitation, like, yeah, why not? But earlier this year, me and this group of friends and a couple other people went to a really cool restaurant that we have here in Toronto called the Stormcrow Manor, which is basically a nerd's dream restaurant. They have a, like, roll your burger and they give you a D20. Anyway, we went for May the 4th. We're all chatting, and Luke and Emma had learned that Bico was happening again this year, and myself and another couple who had never been to anything like this before, never been to this before, basically said, listen, we want to come. Is that cool? And Luke and Emma were like, abso-fucking-lutely. So of course, you know, me thinking in my head again, oh yeah, I can come. I didn't think anything of it until I woke up the next morning and Luke and Emma had started a chat between us, Phil and Tatiana, saying, hey, Bico group, let's talk about it. And I was like, oh shit. Because in my head, I was like, this would be a fun thing. But I didn't really think that they would want me there, quite frankly. I have a thing about that. People not wanting me places when they say that they do and not believing them. So I was kind of like, oh shit, what have I gotten myself into? Because I didn't really know anything about this. I was kind of worried, I'm not gonna lie. I do not do well around large crowds, large groups. I knew that this was going to be, you know, a couple thousand people at some point. And the whole event is based around La Grande Bataille, the big battle, which I have later found out has to do with the whole LARP aspect of the event. At the time I didn't know that. But I kind of thought, shit, what have I gotten myself into? I said I was gonna go to this thing, now I'm kind of locked in. And although part of me was excited, the initial response was, honestly, fear. But I said I was going, so I was going to this fucking thing. And then the real work started. way back in May, we started planning for this. Tickets were going to be going on sale, I think a month later or something like that, for this thing that happened from the 6th to the 14th? Whatever. Started on the 6th of August. I didn't have any Renaissance looking clothing. I kind of have become the person who's culled their wardrobe, and I don't like to have pieces of things that I'm not going to use very often. And so the idea of just having costumes in my wardrobe, especially as an adult, I have this, you know, notion that it doesn't make sense to do that, which is ridiculous. I mean, I'm preventing myself from having fun, but I just didn't have anything to wear. And so I thought, well, there are easy options. I could just buy something simple on Amazon. I could buy something a lot more expensive on Etsy that I would hope would make it in time. Or, hey, remember that sewing machine I got for Christmas a few years ago? I've been meaning to try and use that again. Why didn't I make my clothes? And as I mentioned, I'd been doing a lot of sewing projects this summer. I ended up deciding to make everything that I was planning on wearing there. What I'm wearing right now is one of the things. I have a shift, I have this kind of corsety top thing underneath here. You can't really tell, but this thing is a panel called a stomacher that I made reversible. The other side has this material skirt, and I have a couple other ones too. I've got, you know, a very similar looking, it's different technically, very similar looking corset top in blue, but I made it reversible so that I could wear gray on the other side just to give me some more options. I made the same skirt, but in this kind of brown color. And I made some wrist warmers based off of Claire Fraser's wrist warmers from Outlander, because I was watching way too much Outlander, just simple fingerless gloves basically. I knitted those. I learned how to purl for these. Oh my god. And I actually also, I'm not wearing it now because that would have taken way too long to get on just for a video, but I made a literal under corset that I wore as a bra to keep everything in all week, which, believe it or not, corsets are comfortable. Just don't tight lace. And even beyond that, I went as far as making shoes. These are called ghillie shoes. They're basically based off of, like, they look like what Highland dancers wear. Supposedly they're from the Iron Age, but I didn't actually end up wearing these during the week. Story for later. And yeah, like, I kind of got to work, and it was a fantastic way for me to spend my time, because I am notorious for just sitting and watching things for hours and doing nothing else. Not even like cleaning while I'm doing it, I just get couch locked. So, you know, I could watch my shows and make some cool things that were satisfying as hell. Like I said, I'm a very tactile person. I like to work with my hands, but I also find that I just like to do stuff that I can see come to something right in front of me. So it was a great way for me to spend my time as I was alone in the city for the majority of it, and to know that, hey, this is going towards something. And I'll have a costume at the end of it. But the event itself, where even to begin, to be honest? I'm sorry, this whole thing is going to be all over the place because I have just so much to say. So, Duché de Bicolline is, as I mentioned, a LARP event. I had no idea really what LARP entailed. And maybe that was a part of my nervousness around it because, you know, Luke and Emma were talking about how you make a character and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, you make a character? You have to be in character the whole week? Like, what? You do not have to. But yeah, live action roleplay. Essentially, Bicolline is this organization that's been around for, I want to say 25 years? 25? Yes, this year was the 25th anniversary. Oh shit. Right. And it seems as though there are multiple events throughout the year. I only know of one other by name. I think there's two others maybe that are a lot smaller. The other one that I know of is called the Purple Ball. But This, the Grande Bataille, is, as I mentioned, the longest of them. It runs for a week, and it culminates in a large battle that brings thousands of people out from around the world to participate in this just epic adventure. But, you know, aside from that, you are spending your time on the grounds. It's this plot of land that I guess the company has been buying up for years and years and years and expanding. And when you're not at the events, a lot of the political structures and story, or whatever you want to call it, happens online throughout the year, so that there are things constantly happening, and so that allows the story to progress from year over year. Now, this is a full immersion kind of experience. I didn't really get much in terms of photo or video because you were not really supposed to have your phones. And quite honestly, mine was dead the majority of the time. I did not plan to make sure that I had a full battery, but I didn't need it. There was no reason for me to have a phone because of everything else that was going on. Because you literally step into a medieval village. Now, when I hear Ren Fair, which I assumed that this was before I really knew what it was that we were walking into, almost literally on the car ride, I assumed that it was going to be your standard, like, whole bunch of tents and vendors in a field. And it's open and flat, kind of like a music festival, and not super interesting. This place is about an hour and a half north-ish of Montreal in Canada. You drive and through the beautiful Quebecois French countryside. Absolutely stunning. And you come up to the gates but they give you like a little coin, which is their currency, solaire. And, you know, a $1 off voucher for one of the vendors, and what's called a pop card, population card, that is used within the game for certain things. We roll up to the gates, and immediately, grin on my face, you're seeing these these fences that look like straight out of Brie, and kind of buildings similar to Brie in Lord of the Rings. People are speaking, a good chunk of them, majority of them, are Quebecois, so there's a lot of French happening, and someone who basically only studied French through high school, I was both intimidated and very excited to be able to use my French, however limited. And yeah, we got our stuff, our initial, you know, wristbands. Mine has worn off quite a bit, but it actually says 1022 25e Bicolline le combat des something, which means basically they're throwing us into the 1022nd year, rather than 2022. 1022 is the time frame that we were going back to in this moment. And I fucking loved it. So they have you in this big line as you're winding through these windy roads with trees up on either side of you. It's very hilly, and then once you've gotten those initial things, they send you back around to where you would park or like get into your campsites. And what's very interesting about this is they had both what's called decorum and non-decorum campsites. Decorum basically means that it's immersive. It looks like the time period. It's been approved by the company to basically be like, yes, you can have your tent, whatever it is that you've got, visible where everyone else is walking around. That is allowed. You can be close to the main area of town, all of this kind of stuff. Versus non-decorum, which is people like our group who were bringing normal camping tents and tarps and stuff that just generally does not look like it's from the year 1022. So we rolled around, we pulled in, and as we're pulling in, we're passing by battlements that have been used in previous battles, which was really, really cool. And unfortunately, we were due for some rain. It started thunderstorming or pouring out just as we park our cars right outside where we've decided to camp. And we'd been trying to avoid that so bad, and it just didn't work. But, you know, the entire time we're setting up, getting all our stuff out of our cars, we're getting soaking wet. I'm wearing my dress that is just like, you have to wring it out. It's bad. I look like a drowned rat. No more straight hair for that week, let me tell you. And then we have to take our cars and park it in a parking lot that is well far away, again, to maintain the immersion of the event. And then the week began. We had to make sure that we were wearing decorum clothing, which I was wearing something that I already had that I knew was going to be generally okay. And Luke and Emma said, all right, you guys ready to go? Let's go and we'll show you around the town. And the week began. Okay, hang on. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I should probably introduce you to the people that I was there with. We had Luke and Emma. They're a lovely couple that I work with at Medieval Times, and they are the two who had been once before in 2019. Then we had Phil and Tatiana, a lovely married couple, Phil of whom is a knight at Medieval Times, and his wife doesn't work there, but she's around. We love her. And then of course me. Now, of course, Luke and Emma had explained to us how awesome this place was, but at least to me, I didn't feel like I really understood what it was that we were getting ourselves into. When I tell you, the smile on my face could not be stopped. I am not exaggerating. I want to say that whole first day that we were there, I just had this grin absolutely plastered to my face. We had decided to drive from Toronto to Quebec, stay in an Airbnb on the Saturday because we weren't actually allowed to go in and find our camping spots and set up everything until Sunday, and at 8 p.m. on Sunday night is when the event officially started. So after getting fully rained out on Sunday, donning our cloaks over top of whatever we were already wearing to hopefully keep us warm but also dry, Luke and Emma took us into the village, showed us how to get where we were going, showed us where the bathrooms were, which was down a very treacherous and only kept getting more treacherous hill that was slick with mud the entire week because of the rain. We wandered through the main kind of area past a couple of the decorum camps for some of the guilds and made our way into what is called Newtown. Now, the village itself, quite honestly, I don't know if I know the name for what the village itself is called. But there's Old Town and Newtown. All of the buildings throughout the entirety of the Bicolline grounds are made in medieval styles or historical styles of varying design. And the reason for that is because the majority of the buildings are actually built for and kind of by one of the, some of the many guilds that exist. Bicolline, being a LARP, is filled with dozens of guilds. I know there's at least 50 and growing, but there's probably closer to 100, especially when you count some of the smaller ones. And anyone can create a guild so long as you have enough people. So you have everything under the sun, from religious groups, quote unquote, to Vikings, to Romans, to gypsies, anything that you can, fairies, elves. Well, fae and elves are considered two separate things. Not fairies. Fairies would be fae. Anyway, all of the buildings that you see are pretty much guild buildings, whether they're headquarters or actual living quarters. And then there's a few other smaller buildings that are for vendors, but also there's a tavern, that's an inn as well. There used to be the old tavern that was apparently torn down and they're going to be rebuilding because it was in bad shape. I mean, 25 years will do that to you. But Newtown is where all of the vendors are. You've got this row of multiple different merchants of varying degrees. Some of them are geared towards weaponry and armor. Some of them are strictly clothing. Some of them are kind of knick-knacky or jewelry. There was one that was basically almost like a thrift shop that also had additional things there, where you could get things like wooden bowls and plates, lanterns, baskets. They had everything that you could possibly need. And as the week progressed, the place just ended up filling up more and more and more, because there are multiple passes that you can get for the week. We came in with a 7-day pass, but I believe you could also just do a 3-day if you wanted, or a 1-day if all you wanted to do was participate in the battle. I am so glad that we went for the whole week. First and foremost, I mean, the 7-hour drive is kind of only really worth it if you're staying for a significant period of time, but no matter what, it was worth it. So Luke and Emma are showing us where to go, and although they're the only two who have been here before, me and Phil are eyes as wide as dinner plates, smiles on our faces, trudging like 30 feet in front of them because we just want to see everything all at once. And we're being told by the rest of the group to slow down to take everything in. And we're saying that's exactly what we're doing. We want to take it in faster. And yeah, for a few hours, we were just kind of taking our time wandering through Newtown, looking at some of the vendors. Immediately, Phil and I go to one of them that sells a lot of weaponry, and they're all LARP weaponry. You know, foam swords, not real, bows that are of a limited weight so that you're not actually gonna hurt someone, and the arrows that they have these like big foam things on the end. I would show you, but it's in my car. And the two of us are just standing in line with our weapons, grinning like nobody's business, same expression on our face, just like, ah! We wander through the town. We go and take a peek at as many things as we can there before we continue along our way through where all of the guild buildings start. And we're passing by people, everyone in costume. Actually, not everyone. That first day, you were allowed to be non-decorum until the event started. So there were some people wearing just t-shirt and jeans, or still driving into their camp spots with their cars, which was bizarre given the circumstance. Already we were like, what? Like, that doesn't belong here. But aside from that, you're already seeing people sitting around bonfires, laughing, running up to one another because they haven't seen each other in a year, drinking, playing music, just the whole shebang. And you would think that a LARP event would be mostly for adults. And generally you would assume a certain age range. No, there were people from all walks of life, all ages, but not only that, there were families, and way more families than I was anticipating. You got kids sword fighting in the streets, and I'm just sitting there being like, why didn't I know about LARP when I was a kid? Why don't I have the parents that would bring me to this as a kid for a family vacation? What? I mean, come on. As we're walking, you know, the sun's not quite going down yet, but we are passing by fields where they do different competitions. There is a little kind of courtyard area where they have this fantasy sport that they've created called Troll Ball, which is essentially a combination between fencing and soccer almost, where the ball that you're using, to try and get points is a literal troll's head with like a rope for hair. After some time we eventually make it to what's called the Old Tavern, which I mentioned. Unfortunately, the actual tavern part, the building part itself, had been torn down, so it was just a large kind of event tent with banners and pennants and lights hanging from it, with a simple wooden bar and the friendliest bartenders you will ever have, and the most delicious cider. Oh my god, this stuff was like juice, and it was perfect for a hot day, which generally Bicolline would be, except that we had a very rainy week, so it was not super necessary. Doesn't mean we weren't gonna drink it. We get to the Old Tavern where Luke and Emma had wanted to meet up with the guild that they became closest friends with their previous time, which is a Viking guild called the Oathsworn. Now there are many different Viking guilds, but this was a relatively new one, all English speakers, very small, which is kind of handy because you can get in and not have to meet tons of people and just be overwhelmed by the general gregariousness or whatever of the group that has been around for a long time. And not only that, but the Oathsworn, which I found out later, kind of have a mandate for hospitality. They were some of the most kind, welcoming, open people that you will ever meet, and I definitely understand why Luke and Emma got in with them so fast. I remember driving with Phil and Tat in my car, the three of us kind of talking about whether or not we wanted to spend all of our time with the Oathsworn, because that was kind of their thing, and there are so many guilds. We want to kind of find out a lot more about all the different things. But, you know, there was a skepticism there about why this group. It was apparent the second we met them. We found them at a picnic table, I guess not a picnic table, a tavern table, and just kind of started to get to know everyone, start to meet everyone. We all got our food. There was, of course, poutine. poutine. Hole-in-the-wall poutine, because this vendor didn't have a truck that really could work, so it was literally just a hole in the wall. And just kind of sat around drinking and chatting, and my God, was it absolutely lovely. It's a group of about 10, 15 super warm, lovely people. I'm just gonna keep describing them that way. That's as simple and as complicated as I can put it, quite honestly. And you know what? I say that I had a smile plastered to my face that entire first day. That was true for most of the week. But in general, what struck me is the true feeling of belonging that I had walking into this place. Not only was it amazing to walk in there wearing costume and seeing everyone else wearing costume and just admiring all of their looks and the general atmosphere and feeling like I'd walked into Skyrim, because that's what it did feel like. There was a vibe there. There was a vibe there that truly said, hey, come and be who and what you want. Leave your worries at the door. Just experience something wonderful. Something different. Something that we don't get to experience in everyday life. And that was apparent from the first minute of being there. And not only that, but you're sharing this experience with hundreds and eventually thousands of other people who feel the same, who just want to have a good time, who just want to enjoy the things that they enjoy. Because going to a LARP, you talk to a random person on the street about LARP, they're gonna think you're a nutcase. I mean, it's a very strange idea for an adult to want to go and play dress up in the woods. But no, like, this felt like something different. I mean, I mentioned that I expected it to kind of just be like an open field, like a typical music festival grounds or something like that. No, this was a village situated in peaks and valleys of this gorgeous forested area that did have open fields, but there was a river. There's a river that most people use to bathe in or do dishes or whatever, and you're walking through these buildings. It felt like a real life place, which it literally is, but it felt like I was walking into my favorite fantasy novel. And as someone who has really struggled to, over time, still own that this is something that I love to do as an adult and not feel judged by that, and luckily I now have the people in my life who can appreciate that and want to do these things with me. But for the majority of my life, I knew that I was kind of alone in that, and if I wanted to engage in something like this, it would be on my own. And that has been kind of a sad thing to sit with for a long time. Enough with the gushing and the whatever. The LARP part. So, quite frankly, because it was my first year and there was just so much to see, I didn't engage really in much of the actual LARP. And quite frankly, it seemed like the Oathsworn that we did end up spending basically our entire week with. And it was very handy because they were like a 2-minute walk from our campsite. It was very convenient. But I kind of approached this year, this first of what I know now will be many, in such a way that I was going to observe. Like, quite honestly, I just knew that there were going to be too many things to do, which there were a ton of, that I just wanted to kind of sit back. And quite frankly, I didn't wear clothing that would have allowed me to be particularly engaged in very physical activities. The Grande bataille, does culminate in a big battle, but throughout the week there are multiple mini skirmishes that you can participate in. Shut up, neighbors. I hope they didn't hear that. There are multiple skirmishes that you could participate in during the week. As long as it wasn't raining, there were things going on. And the first morning that we woke up on the Monday morning, actually, me and my friend Phil, he wanted to get his new greatsword certified, basically, to be able to participate in the battles. Basically, them saying, yes, this weapon is acceptable, it's not going to hurt anyone. So we were up at the crack of dawn, way too excited for our own good. walking through the town, and as we were making our way back to the campsite to see what the rest of the group was doing, we passed by battle training that one of the larger guilds was engaging in preparation for the Grande bataille. But not only that, aside from the battles, I mentioned troll ball, this kind of unique sport that they were doing tournaments of throughout the week, which my friend Phil also participated in. He kind of joined, not strictly an Oathsworn group, but a group made up of a bunch of random people that was not meant to be a professional troll ball group, but they literally make a tournament where people take this very seriously, to the point where apparently there are groups that do troll ball throughout the year in their home places to prepare for the troll ball events that happen at Bicolline. There were quests. I never got a picture because I either didn't have my phone on me or thought there's too many people around for me to take a picture or a video, but there was a quest board where people can post things that are available to you. One of them, for example, was kind of like an amazing race. See if I have it. That first morning when Phil and I were kind of just checking out the town and figuring out if we wanted to get food or something, we actually were standing trying to read because the majority of the things on the posting boards were in French. Someone comes up and just nails something else to the board. And one day when the group of us were all just sitting in the tavern getting some food, a man comes up to us with a couple other options of quests that he's trying to get people engaged in. One of them was a scavenger hunt, the other one was like an amazing race type situation. And it's kind of unique because although you're not really allowed to have, you know, your phones and things, there are very specific times for some of these. We went to this kind of tower. I'm not sure exactly what the tower is called, but it was like almost like a mage's tower, where they had other quests too that were more pertaining to the mage side of some of the stuff that you can do, where it's like ingredient and potion, you know, ingredient collecting and potion making, or scribing. There was another quest that I saw where it said, hey, if you think that you would be good at integrating with royals, you know, come here to maybe be a messenger. And some of these quests have time limits. You have to be there at a certain time and it's over by another time. Oh, and I didn't see any of this, but I've heard that some years it can be pretty bloody. There are people trying to murder each other in the street. You know, you've got your daggers, you can like, do it, I don't know. So it's really kind of fascinating. And then at the end of it, you can go home, back to your home base, which for us ended up being the Oathsworn camp. You know, we had a lot of mead that was made by one of the guys in the group, Wolfrin, who's a master brewer. He's been doing it, and he's an older dude. He's been doing it for years, and you know, you're just sharing drinks and food together. We made a lot of meals over the fire in this large pot that's just hanging over the spit. Singing songs, telling stories, getting to know one another, just having conversation. I want to say it was Monday night. We were again being rained out. The first few days it was pretty much pouring the entirety of the time. We went back to the Oathsworn camp and they were playing this game called Liar's Dice, which was, I'd never heard of before, but was very fun and very easy. It's kind of similar to Bullshit, where everyone starts out with 5 dice, and it's kind of like a combination between Bullshit and Euchre. And you can't see anyone else's dice. You start placing bets on how many of that number you think are in the group. So someone might say 5 2s. Someone else might say, okay, raise the stakes, 6 4s. And you go along, and 6s are wild cards. And then someone can call you out and be like, bullshit, there's no way that there's that many of this number here. And you're just trying to fake everyone out to lose their dice, because if they catch you in a position where there aren't that number of dice that you're betting on the table, you lose a dice. But if there are that number and you were correct, the person who called bullshit on you has to lose a dice. And you just keep going until there's a winner, basically. Yeah. There were also different events that the guilds will put on. So we went to a few because we were because we were hanging with the Vikings, and the Oathsworn were putting on the Viking games this year. I don't know whether that's a yearly thing that they do or if they kind of trade up depending on what Viking guild wants to do it. where it's just like simple fun things like try and beat this person at hanging on to this piece of rope for longer than you. Not like a tug of war thing, but like similar, or kind of games of chicken or things like that, but all Viking style, which was very, very cool. And in order to start that out, everyone, there was a sacrifice, which our friend Phil ended up being. And then if you wanted to participate in the game, you needed to get blessed by Odin. We also went to a Fae ceremony where I decided that I was going to get Fae touched. I was given this necklace thing that I've hooked onto my little pouch here. And apparently that was like, hey, change your heritage, come join us, we need more Fae because the Feywild is being ripped apart by whatever. There's like other ceremonies that other guilds do to just praise the gods that their group worships or whatever. So it was very, very cool. Yeah, you can kind of go to whatever it is that you want, except, and I didn't realize this, so there's Fae and elves. Apparently the elves are kind of a bit exclusive. And I didn't think anything of wearing elf ears. I just wanted to wear elf ears because I thought that that was cool. So the second that I found ones, because I didn't own any, the second I started wearing these, I wore them all week. And I had people coming up to me being like, hey, like, you gotta go see the elf camp. It's really cool. They've got hammocks, they've got really cool lanterns and lights that look like mushrooms and stuff like that. But you can only do it with an elf. They won't let you in if you're not. Oh, you'll be fine. And I'm like, what? What happens if I wasn't? And also, is this a big thing that I'm wearing elf ears? People would call me an elf or fae and like try and ask me questions about that, and I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just wearing them. I have nothing to do with them, I'm sorry. But that was a really kind of interesting, unique thing, that there are certain places where what you present as affects kind of the politics in the game, even if you're not really participating, being a character or whatever. There are parts of it that are impacting, you know, how people might act towards you. There was one evening where me and Phil and one of the other guys from the Oathsworn just wanted to go into town and wander around and see some of the cool things in town. And let me tell you, town at night is so fucking cool because you've got torches, you've got lanterns, you've got fairy lights. It was just, but aside from that, it's pitch dark because you wouldn't have flashlights unless you're bringing a lantern with you, which I didn't bring with me. You have no way of getting around. You just gotta kind of follow the moonlight and pick your steps carefully. So we were just walking around the town and we wanted to get a drink and just see more of what was going on. And they were chatting with some random drunk dude who was speaking in a very, very gregarious Scottish accent that was not his real accent, but he was pretty good at it. I just wandered off because I was curious about what was down, you know, a certain direction. I was maybe 10 feet away from my friends. And there's these two guys that come up in like Spanish Inquisition black robes and hats. And they're like, oh, who are you? And I'm like, whatever, Moth. Because I created a character name that was based off of my old high school nickname, Mothball. So I went by Moth for the week. I said, by the way, you shouldn't be wandering around by yourself. It's dangerous for someone like you. Just kind of staring daggers at me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not alone, but thank you. And they walk off. I go over to my friends and I'm like, what the fuck was that? These guys just threatened me. Like, something bad could happen to you. And my friend Phil's like, oh, hell no, like, this is some misogynistic shit or something like that. And I'm like, I mean, I don't think so. They didn't touch me or anything, but like, it was weird. And then we kept walking and the other guy was like, oh, you know what? They're from the witch hunter group. They go after Fae. And you're wearing the ears. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. I know I was only 10 feet away from you guys, but what I mentioned earlier, the whole idea of people stabbing each other in the streets, that potentially could have happened to me. I could have died. I could have died. Guys. That same night, we went to the tavern. This was afterwards, after we'd passed by the guild house for the guys that threatened me. I just ran off to go to the bathroom at one point and come back, and my friend Phil is like, Alicia, you have to see this. And there's this guy sitting there, and I'm just noticing people like giggling and swatting each other's hands away from one another and running around in like a very strange way, and I'm like, what the heck's happening over here? He brings me up to this dude who's like, hey, do you want to join this game that we're doing? And I write my name down, and he gives me this pouch. Had, at one time, 5 clothespins on it. And the game is basically a pickpocket game. It's a game of stealth, where you have to have this visible on you, on your front, where people would try and take clothespins off of you. You can swat their hand away, or if you catch them, they have to give you the clothespin that they took off of you back, plus one of their own, and you're basically trying to get as many of these throughout the week. Now, this was very appealing to me, because as it turns out, I'm a bit of a chaotic being. I love the stealthy things. I've always been, just as a person, a relatively stealthy person. From passing notes in school to other people, like on their behalf, to, I don't know, just easily being able to, I got sticky fingers. Nothing bad, I promise, but I was like, absolutely. And throughout the week, I was also a bit of a kleptomaniac. Oh, it took me so much effort to not just pick up a sword that someone had dropped on the road, because I would have taken it and taken it home. I did the same, like actually taking it with the drum that was left clearly somewhere where someone had dropped it, and we had it for a couple of days before one of the guys returned it to Lost and Found. There was a guitar hanging in the new tavern, that, like a little one, that I just went up, took, was playing it, and walked out with. Wandered around the town with it for a couple of hours, then went and brought it back. So the idea of doing this was very fun. Except I can't be stealthy when someone is expecting you to be stealthy. So I did not do very well at this game. I kind of gave up after a while. But it was fun to attempt, and it was very fun to see people eyeing you and to try and figure out if there was a way that you could get whatever it was off of them. But it just didn't work out for me. Yeah, there was actually one thing that my friend Phil got involved with. He was sitting in the tavern and some guys just approached him and was like, hey, we're doing this heist. Like, we're trying to steal this thing. And he was convinced they were basically trying to steal money from the bank, the Duché bank. And he basically comes up to me and is like, I have something that you might be interested in, because I'm pretty sure these guys are going to try and use me as a fall guy for this heist that I somehow got myself involved in. Would you be down to, without letting them know that you're a part of, you know, that you're my friend or whatever, follow them, find out where they're going to stash this thing before the next person comes and get it, so that we can, like, split whatever it was. And I was like, abso-fucking-lutely. Didn't end up being what he thought he was, what he thought it was. It ended up being an actual battle rather than a heist. But the thought was there, the attempt was there. I was sitting outside the bank on a barrel just reading, hopefully stealthily, for like an hour. I was there 20 minutes early. I waited like half an hour after, until a couple of the Oathsworn guys comes by and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, there was supposed to be a heist, but I don't think it's happening because the time is well past, and I just thought that Phil was going to come by, but no. Anyway, there was music, there were feats of strength, there was an amazing band that played one of the nights called the Swindlers, that I went to after this really cool thing that the Fae put on called the Bardic, where they just brought everyone around a bonfire, and every single person in the circle would have to tell a story, sing a song, a joke, read a poem, whatever. And that was just wonderful because you had everything under the sun. And everyone was just so supportive, and the Oathsworn kind of took over by going after every single person. Da-di-da, di-da-di-da-di-da, high school! Which was one of the chants. It was also, blessed by Odin, Wotan! Those were the Oathsworn calls. But anyway, yeah, like this Bardic was super cool. They had mead that they were offering people. They said, you know, if your cup is broken, if your cup is empty, please fill it up. We've got tons. Went to this Swindlers band thing, which was amazing. And then at the end of it, you could go back home, hang out, talk to people, chill out, cuddle up by the fire. It was very, very nice. Like, to the point where I will come home, walk into my apartment, and it smells like campfire, and I'm like, is someone having a campfire outside? Nope, that's my cloak. Still smells. I do not intend on washing it. I do not. That might be gross, but I do not care. Even everything from like the utensils that you use, so there are no disposable cups, which is very environmentally friendly. Well done, Bicolline. But you have to bring your own drinking things. So I initially brought just my goblet that I'd gotten years ago at a thrift shop that I used for like my Bellatrix Lestrange costume for Halloween a number of years ago at a work party. But of course, drinking horns. I have one from medieval times, but it's plastic, so obviously I couldn't bring it. And hanging out with Vikings, of course, it only made sense. I would much rather have a very light drinking horn in comparison to a very heavy pewter goblet. So I picked up this little beauty. I don't know what kind of horn it is, but it's very light, which was wonderful. And if I wanted, I could hit someone with it. It'd be great. But yeah, this was strapped to my waist the entire time, along with 2 pouches that I just kept my things in. I came with one, and I bought another from a vendor who spoke no lick of English. And I was trying my French and apologizing about how bad it was, and we were still able to have a conversation. He was just lovely. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that the Quebecois, the French in general, are very rude, and a lot of the time, unfortunately, if someone in Quebec hears you speaking French and they know that you don't know how to speak the language, they will just switch to English rather than even let you try. That was not the case here. Everyone was just so forgiving and kind and whatever. So, you know, I have another pouch that I was able to fit like a notebook and a book in, so I could wander around and write anything down that I was feeling in that moment. I also, you know, made sure that I had some utensils. So I bought this. I actually lost my first one, so I had to go back and buy a second. But from a really cool vendor who apparently lives relatively close. These wooden handle, like, got a really cool medieval looking fork there. It's got a spoon and a knife, which is also really cool. Just in this handy little leather wrapped case with snaps that I was able to carry around with me. And then by the end of the week, one of the guys at the Viking Games, who was, I guess, planning on not coming back to Bicolline because he wants to do more LARP and roleplay in Europe, he was selling off a whole bunch of stuff. And this guy is a craftsman. So he was giving away like lanterns, simple lanterns that he had built, which just had this. So I also, you know, slung this on my hip every now and then. Didn't have a candle for it, but I was walking around with it for a while. But I can't even begin to tell you what this week had meant to me. Without a shadow of a doubt, I'm going back for as many years as I possibly can, because it was the first time in a long time where I felt like I could be myself. I felt like I wasn't weird, or that I could just enjoy my time. I could open up with people and not feel afraid to. I definitely went into this thinking that I was going to need to go and escape off by myself for a while, like away from people, to get away from people. Because oftentimes in the last number of years I've felt like I've had to do that. It's been too overwhelming for me. And nothing about this week gave me that feeling at all. If anything, I wanted to be around people all the time. I wanted to go and do these things and just hang out and just talk and participate or not in whatever was going on. I felt very welcome there. Like, the oath sworn, I'm seriously thinking swearing in next year. That's a thing that you do, and like, there's not really much that goes with that because the oath sworn aren't a particularly LARP heavy group. They like to participate in the battles, but they're not, you know, aside from the events that they put on, they're not crazy with anything. They're just good people who like to hang out. Like, on the second day, one of the guys, Romeo, handed me this necklace, me and one of the other girls in the group. And he said, yeah, I had these Purple Heart bracelets, not necklaces, bracelets, Purple Heart wood, and I wanted you to have them because I love you. And it's like, all right, I mean, this is the second day and already I've been adopted into the group, even though I was a bit of a fae invading the Viking horde. But yeah, like I got closer with the friends that I came with, and I made some really good friends that I talk to already on the regular. And you know, that's huge for me as someone who doesn't feel like I've been able to be myself much throughout my life, or I've been ashamed to show certain parts of it. It meant a lot, you know, during the day, during the night, the entire time was just a absolute treat to be a part of. And I am not going to forget it anytime soon. I'm just honestly glad that I took the plunge, because if I hadn't have said, hey, yeah, like, I would love to go to that, these people wouldn't have just thrown me in a Facebook chat, and I wouldn't have felt obligated to stick with that, yes, I do want to go. Which is ridiculous, and I think that's something that I'm figuring out more and more. You know, I've spent a lot of my life waiting for other people to lead me to opportunities of things that I'd like, and that's no way to live, because then it means that the opportunities that I'm being led to aren't really mine, they're other people's. I'm learning more and more to take that ownership back on myself, so that I can make sure that I'm living the life that I want to. And my god, if I could live my life at Bicolline, you better fucking believe I would do that. Because although it was kind of camping living, and I was sleeping on the ground in a tiny tent for one person with my stuff strewn everywhere where I couldn't find anything, having to potentially bathe in the river or be very confused trying to talk to people in French, and wishing that I had more French. That was the kind of place where people get it. Those are my kind of people. And if I can do a LARP again sometime soon, a different one, I would love to try. This is going to have been a very long video of me just talking about something that I feel like I needed to record. Because it's already been a couple of weeks and I don't want to forget the amazing things that happened. Amazing things. Amazing place, amazing people. And I'm just so excited for next year. But yeah, it made me happy to do that, and I think I really needed that.
The Shire is burning. So Mordor it is.
There will come a soldier who carries a mighty sword.